Welcome to Stroke Buddies Tuesday Stroke Survivor Support Group meeting. We have these meetings every Tuesday and we put them up on YouTube. We're trying to provide some useful information to stroke survivors that they can use in their recoveries, and today's program is no exception. Um, I'm happy to welcome Sherry Mourant back. She did a program on us with us a few weeks ago that I thought was really excellent, and I know that she knows a fair amount about food and nutrition. I don't think she tries to sell herself as a nutritionist. However, that's not really necessary for what we're going to talk about, because we're not going to get down to the nuts and bolts level of um, scientific nutrition, or we would have a PhD nutritionist, right, Dr. Hetzler?
Right. I think it would be nuts and grains rather than nuts and bolts.
Oh, very good. Very good. I love his jokes. Sometimes I think I'm the only one who gets them, but anyway, that's a great nuts and grains. We're not going to get down to the nuts and grains of nutrition today, but what we are going to do is talk a little bit about what's the best diet for you. Yeah, and we have to use that word diet. And diet, connotes to most people some kind of a program where you are you're engaged in order to lose weight, is the typical thing where most people go when they hear diet. Um, Both Sherry and I will tell you that we have a diet. In other words, we have a plan that we try and stick to, but we're not on any particular diet for a couple of reasons. Everybody's different, so everybody reacts differently to the various diets out there. And being strict about adhering to one plan or another may not be the best thing for you. A lot of people don't know what to do, so they tend to latch on to one thing, that like a diet that tells them everything that they should do, and that way they feel comfortable. We're going to try and I guess, Sherry, we're going to try and take them out of their comfort zone here today and give them some information that'll let them put together a plan for them based on, good basic food nutrition. And so I came across this little meme the other day, and I thought it was pretty good. It said, eat less crap. Carbonated drinks, they mean sodas, but it had to start with a C in order to spell out crap. And refined sugar, less refined sugar, always a good idea. Some people believe sugar is poison. I don't know if we're going to get into things that far. Certainly artificial sweeteners and colors. I personally don't like to put anything into my body that I don't know what the heck it is or what it's going to do. And a big one for P, processed foods. This is kind of like the idea of like shop the outside of the supermarket where they've got all the fresh stuff, and stay away from aisle 13 where they've got all the stuff with ingredients this long that you can't pronounce. And the positive side is eat more food. F is fruits and veggies. O is organic lean proteins. Everybody needs protein. Most people, I don't believe, get enough protein. O is omega-3 fatty acids. That's possibly brain food. And D is drink water. And I actually made a segment on hydration in this, so we'll talk about that for sure. And I've gone on far too long without letting Sherry talk. So we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of diets. I'm a vegetarian that eats fish. I don't know that I'm a pescatarian because I don't eat fish all the time. I use fish as a way to make sure I get protein. As a vegetarian, you have to be careful that you eat enough beans and things that give you protein, because the simplest way to get it that most people get it from is eating meat. And if you give up meat, then you have to be concerned about protein. Rebecca's with us here. She's a vegan, and when we get to Q&A or discussion, she's going to say a little bit about um, how vegan lifestyle has helped her. And Sherry is a bit of a, I guess you're an omnivore, Sherry. I think that she has a wellness community that I'm a part of, and she actually plans out meals for a month at a time in addition to providing recipes. And her recipes, they might have chicken in them or something, but she usually provides an option for a substitute or just leave it out,
Yeah,
kind of thing. And they're very vegetable based. So Sherry, why don't I stop talking and let you tell us about Sherry's diet, if you will? Because what we're trying to do is let everybody figure out how to make Winnie's diet or John's diet or Bruce's diet. And I know mine, so why don't you tell us yours and kind of have maybe a little bit about how you got there, because this was really transformational for you, as I recall.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I was going to say it'd be helpful for everyone, I think, to understand how I got into learning about nutrition to the point that I've learned right now, because I'm an occupational therapist. That's my profession. But in OT school, we don't learn very much about nutrition. In fact, next to nothing about nutrition. And so over the course of my lifetime as an adult, I was always looking for the diets that would help me control my weight. And for the most part, I was never successful. I was always a little bit heavier than I wanted to be and never found the diet that was going to work for me. So what I found was when I started investigating more and start from what I know now about nutrition, I was actually not eating enough food. I was eating a lot of processed foods for convenience. I was not drinking enough water, back to your point about water, Ralph. In fact, because as an occupational therapist, I'm out on the road seeing clients a lot, I was purposefully avoiding drinking water because then I would have to use the bathroom more frequently, which is exactly the point, but I was avoiding drinking the water. And I was completely eliminating some food groups from my diet in an attempt to control my weight, the main things being fat and carbohydrates. So all of those things were a recipe for disaster. Now that I know more about what works best for my body, I know that all those things I was not doing myself any favors. So about 5 years ago, I discovered a nutrition plan that went along with the exercise program that I was doing. And it's based on a macrobiotic plan. So basically achieving a balance of proteins, carbohydrates, and healthy fats in our diet. So three basic food groups: the proteins, the healthy fats, and the carbohydrates, and making sure that we have enough water in our diet and making sure that we get enough food intake in the run of a day to provide us with energy and to make us feel full and to make us feel good. So since I made some changes to my diet and started to increase the amount of calories I was eating on a daily basis, making sure that I had a balance of the three food groups, drinking more water, I have way more energy. I did incidentally drop 36 pounds. So it did result, eating healthy did result in weight loss. Yes. Was that my primary objective? No. But it was a side effect from that. But for me, having way more energy is the main thing that I am happy about, that I've achieved as a result of changing my diet. And I've resolved some lifelong GI issues that I had. I had chronic constipation for most of my life. I also had a lot of heartburn at various intervals through my life. And I also had, because I was eating so much refined sugar, I also had inflammation in my joints. All of that has disappeared over the last 5 years of eating a healthy diet.
Okay, so I mean, I know that there are healthy fats. Um, some of the things that come to mind are various nuts and seeds, flax seeds,
Hmm.
almonds, cashews, nuts,
Avocados.
avocados, coconut, yeah. And I use some oil. I don't use a lot of oil, but I tend to use olive oil, which most people consider fairly acceptable as an oil. You
Yeah.
want to stay away from hydrogenated fats, processed fats,
Hmm.
uh, because your body doesn't absorb them. It's my understanding your body doesn't process them the same as it does natural fat. So fats are one thing, carbs are another, and protein was the third. So let's talk a
Hmm.
little bit about that and that balance because, see, in all these diets, uh, carbs have gotten a really bad reputation over the last 20 years. And
They sure have.
as a runner, I remember going to carbo loading spaghetti dinners the night before a race. So, I mean, what's up with that? I mean, what
Runners still do that.
I, well, yeah, because I think there's some, because, well, I hope what we're going to talk about is the difference between good carbs and bad carbs. I think you and I
Hmm.
had a little bitty discussion about that, and I'm hoping to that maybe you could revisit that, and then we'll get into protein sources, and then we'll get into like how you figured out how to balance these three.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so essentially, not that I try to avoid eating carbohydrate sources that have flour in them. So do I ever eat bread? Absolutely. I occasionally eat bread, but before I was eating bread every day during the times when I wasn't avoiding carbohydrate, or I was eating bread every day. All of the flour, regardless of what type of flour it is, even if it's whole grain flour, is hard for our gut to process, and it also contains less nutrients because it's been processed. I purposefully avoid things with flour in them, and I prefer to get my carbohydrate sources from things like baby potatoes, sweet potatoes, things that are more nutrient dense. Um, in if the plan that I follow, things like beans and legumes are considered carbohydrates for me, so I'll eat those as a carbohydrate source. Chickpeas are one of my favorite sources of carbohydrates on my plan. So I will tend to go for more natural sources. If I want to have a wrap, for example, I make them with red lentils and water, whiz that up in the blender till it becomes smooth, pour it in a frying pan and make a wrap out of it and use that to make a sandwich if I want to have a sandwich.
I've switched to, and they're now fairly readily available in regular supermarkets, which is
Mm,
always makes things easier. Who likes to go to five places to get your food shopping done every week? Uh,
exactly.
Red lentil and chickpea pasta, so you don't have to
Yeah,
completely give up things that you like. If you love baked ziti, you can make it with red lentil penny, which I
yeah,
did a couple of weeks ago. Um,
yeah.
I also, this gets us, to the edge of a slippery slope, which is the whole gluten intolerant thing. I personally believe that we're over farming and over processing wheat. I think that a lot of I mean, when I was a kid, nobody was gluten intolerant. Nobody.
No,
No one.
no.
So what does that tell you? That tells you that something's changed, and this opens up the whole can of worms that you and I have talked about. Like our food system is basically broken because it's based on production. There are too many people in the world, and there's climate change, and lots of factors are I don't know if they're forcing, but they're causing companies to get more into manufactured foods. Personally, I wish I lived in Europe because they have a ban on genetically modified foods, and I'm always
Mm,
like looking at the labels and they put it in
yeah,
little tiny text at the bottom. If they put it at all, they're not required.
Mhm.
We should at least have labeling so that people can pick, but I'll get down off my soapbox now.
In a lot of cases, the soil that the food is grown in has been depleted of nutrients, so therefore the food doesn't have as high a nutrient content as what it should. My husband and I have recently watched a really good documentary on cattle farming. I am a meat eater, but I try to eat free range beef and chicken as much as possible. But the documentary was about the grass that the cows eat, even if they are free range. The farmers back years and years ago, the farmers used to take the herd to different parts of the land so that the grass had an opportunity to grow sufficiently to a level where the grass had maximum nutritional value, and then the cows would eat the grass and their meat would be have higher nutrients because of the quality of the grass that they were eating. But the farmers don't do that anymore. The cows stay in the same field and they keep eating the grass, so the grass doesn't get an opportunity to become much more than baby grass, and that's actually what the researcher called it, baby grass. And baby grass doesn't have as high a nutrient content as fully mature grass. So therefore the cows don't have, or the chickens in which case, don't have as high nutritional value as back years ago when the cows used to be moved from different, to different areas of the land.
As a
Hmm.
video guy, I get paid, actually. I get paid. I can't believe sometimes they pay me to do the things that I get to experience, but I got paid one time to follow Joel Salatin around for a couple of days. He is a second generation organic farmer in Virginia, has a company, has a farm called Polyface, as in many faces. Anybody who's interested in him, I shot a presentation of his and I have it on DVD and I can send it to anybody who would like to know more about this. But he puts 100 head of cattle. He has a lot of temporary fencing. And he'll put 100 head of cattle on 1 acre. 1 acre. For how long, Sherry? 1 day.
Oh, one day, okay.
He's got this whole thing about grass also. The savanna, he uses the African savanna as a model, and you have like wildebeests and stuff, and they come charging through and they tromp the grass, and the grass is used to getting tromped. It's what makes it regenerate. So you put a lot of, and the other thing is, when you're talking about cows in that one big field, guess what? They don't eat the stuff they don't want. Sometimes you see weeds growing up like 4 feet tall in the middle of the pasture because they won't eat stuff. There's no
Mm,
herd pressure. So when you put
mm,
100 of them on an acre, they eat it clean, and then it goes away for months, and the grass gets to grow. And he's even got this thing about the wildebeest have egrets on their back, so he brings in his turkey and chicken wagons the day after, and they clean up everything, get rid of all the pathogens and stuff. He's got a whole system. It's interesting. But
mm.
and the other thing while we're on this, just popped in my head is organic doesn't mean what it used to.
No.
I'm sorry to have heard, like, when I was a young hippie and I switched over to a vegetarian lifestyle, organic meant the California Organic Standard, and we now have 10 standards of organics, and I would argue that when you have 10 standards, you don't have a standard, and some of them are so low that I wouldn't consider them organic.
Hmm.
Anyway, um, so I personally believe that we're manufacturing wheat, and that has something to do with all the people who are gluten intolerant and have celiacs. My granddaughter has celiac disease. What did she do wrong? She got bored into a world of manufactured foods.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the thing she did wrong. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
the
So
go ahead.
the best thing that we can do for ourselves though is to try to eat natural sources of carbohydrates as much as possible, rather than processed sources of carbohydrates.
I would argue, and I bet you wouldn't argue with me, that that's true with proteins and sugars as well. I mean,
Exactly.
our brains run off of sugar, I believe. Dr. Hetzler might have more to say about that, but
That's
uh,
correct. Glucose.
Yeah, glucose. Um,
Yeah.
so you need some sugar, but I try and get my sugars from things like fruit and fruit juice and places where they are naturally occurring, as opposed to, you know, a 12-inch can, a 12-ounce can of soda has what, 11 teaspoons of sugar in it? Anybody wants to think about drinking soda sometime, get out your white sugar if you still have it in your house. I don't. And scoop out 11 teaspoons and take a look at that. And that's what you're putting in your body every time you drink one of those. Anyway,
Fruit is better than fruit juice.
Exactly. Fiber,
Fruit is
we
better
need
than fruit
fiber.
juice.
yeah,
Mm,
no, I agree. Because even a lot of the, you know, you get 100% pure juices and stuff, and they're made from concentrate. I worry about, you know, you buy like a 100% cranberry and it's got like white grape juice and apple juice and cranberry, and there's
And
no,
at the bottom, it says from concentrate.
yeah, it does. Now I
If you're
don't,
going to drink fruit juice, you want to try to get something that says no added sugar.
yeah,
Mm,
oh yeah, no, I definitely buy the ones with no added sugar. It's not juice then, it's actually a drink. If you see the word
mm,
drink after fruit, like if you go, I don't want to pick on anybody, but there's a well-known brand of orange juice that you can buy at the 7-Eleven. They make apple juice and cranberry, but they all say drink. Actually, the apple and the orange are, but they make some other ones and they'll say cranberry drink. And that's your clue that it's 12% cranberry juice and it's sugar water, other than that, for the other 88%. So natural sources are always good. In one of the groups, I saw something that said they summed it all up with a couple of statements. Uh, Shop the outside aisles of a supermarket because that's where
mm.
all your fresh stuff is. Don't eat anything your grandmother wouldn't serve you. I like that one.
Well, there's something to be said for that because our grandparents and our great grandparents had a lot less disease than in and conditions like gluten intolerance you were talking about than we have now.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
Well, I do oral histories with people who grew up on the farm before electricity. I've done 110 of them, so I've talked for, you know, hundreds of hours to people about this, to like real people who grew up on the farm. And, you
mm,
know, they had a milk cow and they had chickens and they had a spring house that they kept their stuff cold. They were so much more connected to the earth. And I think
mm.
that's, you know, that didn't occur to me before, but that's kind of the theme for this whole talk that we're having. The more connected you are to the natural sources and to what was here before,
Mm.
um, just, you know, makes is better for you. It makes sense. We
That's
didn't
true.
used to. Go
If I
ahead.
can interrupt for just a minute
Sure.
there, it's nice, I guess it's nice to have a cow, but you don't ever want to drink unpasteurized milk.
Mm, yeah.
You don't want to drink raw milk. In
Mm,
years gone by, you could get tuberculosis because the
mm.
cows have tuberculosis. So you really need pasteurized milk. I'll be quiet now.
Well, and you know, some people would argue that you shouldn't be drinking any cow's milk. That you should be drinking almond milk or something that, you know, depletes the water resources in California. Oops, I said that. Um, uh, Coconut. I mean, they make a bunch. Soy. Although there are people who really are, there are a bunch of people who are like totally anti-soy for whatever reasons. So
I think what it all comes down to, and one of the parts of the process that I went through was starting to track not only what I was putting in my body, all the things I ate and all the things that I drank. So recording what I was putting in my body, but also if I noticed any particular ways that my body reacted to those foods in a negative way, because just because something is healthy for us or should be something that we should be eating doesn't mean that our own body reacts positively to those things. Um, you know, some of us have food sensitivities, not necessarily full blown allergies to
right,
foods, but our bodies may have a negative reaction to it. I'll give you an example. So and it could be the state of the food as well. So if it's coming up to Canadian Thanksgiving here this weekend, and it's tradition in my family to eat turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. And I will be going to my parents and we will be eating the turkey, but I fully expect that after I eat the turkey, within a few minutes, my stomach becomes very distended. So and now that I know that, because I've tracked it long enough to see the consistent pattern, every time I eat turkey, my stomach becomes distended and I become uncomfortable. So I have a sensitivity to eating turkey for whatever reason, whether it's the additives that they put in the turkey to make the turkey grow larger, or whether it's just the turkey meat itself that causes me to have that reaction. I know that, so I will still eat it, but I'll limit the quantity of the turkey that I eat for that reason. Whereas if I eat lean ground turkey, I'm perfectly fine. So all that to say, it's important to figure out uh, what diet is right for you. It's important to not only track what foods you're putting in your body, but your body's own reaction to different foods as well.
This is very similar to the awareness we try and preach about body awareness when you're
Mm,
exercising.
yeah.
If you look inward and you're good enough at paying attention to the signals that your body is sending you, there's a wealth of information there, both in terms of what you're talking about in food and in exercising. I'm always talking about, um, well, so anybody who can, be aware of things and try and connect the dots is going to, make that connection like you did, with turkey. I started eating more fish recently because I read an article about aging vegetarians, of which I am one. We can't, none of us can stop aging. And, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I looked in the mirror and I went, damn, I'm 71. I thought I was 31. Anyway, um, so I didn't used to eat a lot of meat, and I would notice that if sometimes when we'd go out to dinner, I would order a piece of fish or something. I noticed if it was like if I ate a big piece of tuna, that I would feel a little bit of that. I don't know if I'd call it bloated, but heaviness.
Mm,
And so, when I went to the Christmas dinner with the fried turkey, peanut oil, and boy, is that good. Whether you even for us coming from a vegetarian, I would just take a couple little teeny ceremonial pieces, I called them.
mm,
Um, our bodies process meat differently than they do vegetables. And
mm,
I'm sure, Sherry, you know this. So basically, meat takes about 3 days to go through you, about 72 hours, and vegetables
mm,
go through your body in about 24. So if I go out and I'm eating a big piece of tuna steak, it tastes great and everything, but I need to be a little careful because it's going to sit in me longer
mm.
and create a little bit of heaviness is what I've felt. So
You
it's
might,
kind of interesting when if you bounce back and forth, you're switching between how long the different things take to go through you.
Well, if
Yeah.
I could interrupt for a minute, if
Sure.
you're eating meat, you might try eating a probiotic first. That might help you digest the meat more rapidly.
I
Well,
do
I
take
don't eat a lot of meat.
prebiotics and probiotics.
And that's on my list, so I'm glad you brought it up. And hey, I'm a guy that knows how to jump shift and circle back to where we were, because probiotics and Bruce, Dr. Hetzler, may play into some of your knowledge. I don't know. We haven't discussed this in advance. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I do take a probiotic, and I take a natural one. I think it's got about 15 billion. I don't know, or is it 50 billion? Yeah, I think it's 50, and I cut them in half. Because guess what? The 25 billion costs as much as the 50 billion. So I buy the 50 billion and cut them in half. Anyway, I always paid attention to my digestive system. We now call it your gut genome. Uh,
Mm,
I always avoided antibiotics for one. I've only ever taken antibiotics about 3 or 4 times in my life when I'm forced to. Um,
Well, sometimes you have to, or you're going to die. So,
I
Yeah, exactly.
I understand that, and I'm still here. I'm not a fanatic. I just, so when I had to, I took them. But, antibiotics wipe out your gut genome. And
Mm,
sure.
if you talk to your doctor, if you're on them, they'll tell you not to eat calcium or cheese, and that sometimes includes yogurt. But I think the science is if you wait 3 or 4 hours after. See, when I'm taking antibiotics, I like to take probiotics. And I asked my doctor, and he said, yeah, you can keep taking your probiotics. 'Cause I had to take antibiotics recently for an operation I had. And I specifically asked this because I was taking the probiotics. So I'm taking antibiotics and probiotics at the same time. And I think the answer on cheese and calcium, because I like to eat active yogurt as well as take the probiotic, um, was that if you waited a few hours, my daughter came in, she was one time, she was on antibiotics, and I said, well, you should do some yogurt. And she said, well, the doctor said no. We looked up the whole calcium in yogurt thing, and I'm pretty sure that's the answer. So, Dr. Hetzler, maybe this is something you could elucidate on. Um, we talk, one of the problems that people have post-stroke, there are two of them that this whole conversation could be beneficial for. One is post-stroke fatigue, and we haven't gotten to that yet. And Sherry, try and put a mental note in case I don't circle back that we talk about that. And the other is the fact that the new science says that your gut genome is much more tied to your brain than we ever thought. And it's actually responsible for you producing serotonin. And what are most antibiotics? Not all of them, not antibiotics, antidepressants. Sorry, we got onto antibiotics there. Most antidepressants, not all, are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So basically, um, they're providing you with more serotonin, which is basically what your gut genome does. So if you don't have a good gut genome, you're likely to not be very happy either. Uh,
mm.
so I don't know if you got anything to add to that, Dr. Hetzler, or not.
Well, the most, though not all, antidepressants, at least most of the current ones that are used, are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That means that the neuron releases the serotonin. The serotonin is normally, the action is normally terminated by reuptake that is being drawn back into the axon ending. And what the SSRI does is to block that reuptake transporter so you have more serotonin in the synaptic cleft. And you obviously have to have a good supply of serotonin in the axon ending to begin with. So you do need serotonin, and you manufacture, or your brain manufactures serotonin uh, from things that you eat. So yeah, you do have to eat a good diet. Um,
Well, I think this is an emerging science, the connection between the brain and the gut. At least it's emerging for me. I didn't hear about it more than 5, 6, 7 years ago. Um,
Happy gut, happy brain.
There you go. I
Exactly.
like that. I'm going to make a graphic about that. Happy gut, happy brain. I love it. So, one other thing you mentioned before we started the meeting that I'd like you to circle back was when we were talking about diet drinks and can you give us like the short elevator pitch version of the whole thing about aspartame and the brain?
Well, yeah, aspartame, brand name Nutritional. Now, I learned a lot about this when I spent a year working for the neurophysiology branch of the neurotoxicology division of the Environmental Protection Agency in a laboratory in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. During that time, I went to a neurotoxicology conference, in which there are a number of people that have been doing research on neurotoxicology, and one of them was Dr. Olney from Washington University in St. Louis. And he had done research with monkeys on aspartate and glutamate. Those are natural neurotransmitters in the brain. That is, an axon will release them. They're excitatory neurotransmitters. That is, they make the next neuron, the receiving neuron, more likely to become active. But they're also neurotoxic. They can kill the receiving neuron. Now, that's normally not a problem because they are deactivated once they are released. They're deactivated by reuptake, that is, taking them back into the axon ending. But you can overload that system by inadvertently getting too much of them. And there are a number of ways that can be done. One is by drinking like pep drinks that will have glutamate in them or aspartate. Those are an additive into something you might buy at a health food store. Or you could take aspartame, again, brand name NutraSweet, because once you ingest it, it's broken down into aspartate. And then you get too much aspartate in the brain, and it can kill the receiving neuron. That is, it gets into the synaptic cleft and it can kill neurons there. And I could jump from here to a problem immediately after stroke. I'll come back to that after I finish this other thing.
Okay.
Um,
So soda's out. Whether it's sugar or one way you can get too much aspartame is people go, oh, I'll just switch to diet soda on my diet. And they, the people I see that drink diet soda drink 6 or 8 of them a day. I mean, it's not like they drink one. It's like that's their, they used to drink soda and they switch over to diet soda because they think that that will help them in some way.
Well, it won't. And actually, research shows that people that drink diet soda every day show a 4 times greater increase in waistline compared to people that don't.
Yeah.
So drinking diet soda increases your weight. So don't drink diet soda in general. And aspartame gets converted in the brain to aspartate, and that gets through areas of the brain that have what's called a low blood-brain barrier. There's a barrier between your bloodstream and your brain. And that's why some drugs are psychoactive, because they get through the blood-brain barrier, others aren't. And but that's another subject.
Oh yeah.
But the point is, aspartate gets through areas with a low blood-brain barrier, like the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus, and it can damage neurons there and alter release of hormones.
Wow.
All of which causes weight gain. So it can damage the brain in that part of the hypothalamus. And that's especially true, only found in young monkeys. And it was his research that managed to keep aspartame out of baby food, because there was a push to put it in baby food just for the sake of money, making money, but that would have caused brain damage in infants. And luckily that never happened.
Money, good old money.
Exactly.
But let me, I'm going to go back now, circle back to this notion of aspartate or glutamate. They're both sort of the same thing. They're both excitatory neurotransmitters. And after a stroke, you can get what's called a glutamate cascade that can make the stroke worse over several days. Why is that? Well, glutamate or aspartate neurons, if they're damaged, release an excessive amount of glutamate. And that can overexcite the receiving neuron. And if they are glutamate neurons, they in turn will release an excessive amount of glutamate. You get, like if you throw a rock into a pond, you get these waves that ripple outwards. And that can happen at the core of a stroke and can set up these waves of glutamate release, which can successfully kill more and more neurons and increase the size of the core of the stroke. Again, it's called a glutamate cascade. That's one reason I'm glad that the doctors put me in a drug-induced coma for 8 days to keep those neurons from becoming active and preventing an increase in size of the basic stroke.
So no diet soda in the rehab hospital.
No.
No,
Last place you should drink it. Well, we've kind of said shouldn't drink it, period.
right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let me just say something real quick here about I became aware of this. I wasn't drinking enough. I was drinking about 32 ounces. I really need about 80 or 90. The old thinking was 64 ounces, and doctors will still tell you that. I had a doctor tell me that 6 months ago, and
It's not enough.
an older guy. Yeah, the new thinking is a half an ounce per pound of body weight. So 64 ounces by the half a pound, you double it. That's good for somebody who weighs 128 pounds. It's also not enough for somebody who weighs 128 pounds that like does a sweaty workout or is outside in the sun or whatever. So
Yeah.
I weigh 170. So my formula is somewhere between 80 and 96. I drink these 16-ounce glasses. And so if I get 5 of those, I'm at 80, and if I get 6, I'm all the better. And I make sure that if I'm working outside mowing the lawn or something, I make sure that day I get 6 or 7 even.
My wife used to tell me I didn't drink enough, and then I discovered she meant water.
Not wine.
I
Well,
don't.
it's
I
actually
have a
a
glass.
common thing that comes up. I get people say to me all the time, well, I drink green tea,
Oh
green tea
crap!
or coffee. Does that is that considered water? Well, yes, it has water in it, but the caffeinated beverages are actually dehydrating. So it actually detracts from the amount of straight water that you're drinking. If you are drinking tea or coffee, subtract that from the amount of water that you drank, and then you need to drink more water.
Well, and that's why I don't count the glass of wine that I have occasionally after dinner in my total. And I just want to tell people out there that I struggle with this. I had no taste for water. I literally had to pick up a glass of water and force myself to drink it. Force myself to drink it. So if you're having trouble with this transition to water, you're not the only one. I don't get thirsty.
Infused water, if you infuse your water with different flavors, can be very helpful, make it more palatable to drink. I infuse my water sometimes with one of my favorite flavors are citrus flavors. So I'll put some orange slices or some lemon lime slices in my water to give it a bit of flavor, or some sliced strawberries and mint is another one of my favorites. I grow mint in my garden specifically so that I can chop some up and put it in my water to flavor my water. Or cucumber is another really good way to flavor your water with natural flavors too.
Speaking of citrus, I think for the general group, we should point out that if you're on prescription medication, you really should not be eating grapefruit or drinking grapefruit juice, because
Mhm.
that will alter drug metabolism. It'll make some
Right.
drugs more potent, some less potent. And it's a
Mhm.
drug by drug basis. It's not something for a general class of drugs. So if you're taking prescription medications, don't eat grapefruit or drink grapefruit juice.
I remember one time when early on, I think it was the first year after I had my stroke, somebody gave me, it was a carbonated beverage that was grapefruit flavor. And I thought, well, it says it's flavored. It doesn't say it has grapefruit juice in it, but I was taking cholesterol medication. And so I said, well, okay, well, I'll drink a little bit and see what happens. I was never so sick in all my life. I had a booming headache, like 10 out of 10 on the pain scale, that didn't go away for more than 24 hours.
Wow.
Hmm.
Anyway, I never got thirsty. This is very interesting. I never was thirsty, and I had no taste for water. And what I did was I cut out anything except water, and I kept trying. It took me about literally 5 years to get from 32 ounces to 96. One way I did it was uh, I rewarded myself with number five. Right around dinner time, I would have a glass of fruit juice or Blue Machine or something like that as kind of a reward. And the interesting thing was, I also talked to a number of other people, and like my daughter, and she said, "No, I don't get thirsty, never thirsty." Well, after a couple of years of being at the proper hydration level, I get thirsty now. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's
Mm.
like your body,
Our
and
body's like a sponge.
yeah, I also, the other day I was working really hard and I realized I had one glass of water and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Normally I'm on like, I'm trying to be somewhere between three and four
Mm.
glasses at 2 o'clock. And I started getting like a little like low grade headache, and
Mm.
it's definitely from dehydration. I
Yeah.
also, another time, a couple times, I could feel it in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
get sinus related headaches if I am dehydrated. The other thing that can happen if you're dehydrated, a lot of times people mistake hunger for thirst. People think that they're hungry and they reach for food, but it's not that they're hungry. It's that they're dehydrated and they need to drink more water.
We're staying on the subject because studies estimate that 80% of Americans or people in civilized societies are dehydrated. So this is a big issue.
Yeah,
And
it is.
water helps with everything, processing food, health, whatever.
Well, our
Um,
brains are mostly water. In order for our brains to function properly, we need to make sure that we have enough water.
yeah.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about post-stroke fatigue, and maybe you had mentioned back to your diet, Sherry. I believe that your husband kind of accidentally went on it. I'm kind of an omnivore too. I mean, I don't eat like meat or anything, but if, guess what? If somebody makes dinner and puts it in front of me, I'm likely to eat it. So
Hmm.
he got exposed. I suppose he got exposed to what you were doing as opposed to intentionally seeking it out. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit
So
about.
my husband's two main food groups that he would eat meat and fruit. That's it, pretty much. He would eat very little in the way of complex carbohydrates and very little fat, healthy or otherwise, in his diet. He weight trains every day. He's participated in weightlifting competitions and things, so he's that was the way he ate when he trained for competitions, to keep the fat low, carbohydrates low, eat mainly meat, and he was eating fruit for energy. But my observation, back to the topic of tracking, he didn't notice it, but what I noticed, because he was trying to generate more energy, he was eating more and more and more and more fruit, even though it's natural sugar. That the level of fruit that he was eating is not healthy for anyone's body. So he, over time, he noticed that I was eating less fruit and more vegetables with healthy fat, and I was having more sustained energy levels throughout the day. So he reduced the amount of fruit that he was eating and substituted for more vegetables with some healthy fat and still the protein. And he came the other last week and said, I really noticed a significant increase in my level of energy. So it's back to that balance. If we have a balance between healthy proteins, complex carbohydrates from natural sources, and healthy fats, we can help to level out our energy levels and have more sustained energy levels throughout the course of the day.
Okay, I'm going to play the average viewer here for a minute, and the average viewer is probably thinking, okay, where's the chart? Where's the pie chart? You know, so I can see exactly what this balance is supposed to be. And I suspect that there's some kind of a range that would be good, but that it's also somewhat individual. Is that something you
It
know
is
anything
very
about?
much individual, and it depends what your goals are. If you are interested in losing some weight, then the percentages for the 3 food groups change a little bit. I'm at the phase now that I have been weight training myself for the last almost 5 years now. So, and I don't want to lose any weight. I want to build some more lean muscle. So I personally eat 40% lean protein, 30% carbohydrates, 30% fat.
And where do you get your protein from mostly?
Um, Mainly, I do eat animal products. As I said, I will eat chicken. I eat fish. I eat occasionally beef, but not very often. Mainly it's poultry and fish. And I don't eat that much in the way of dairy products, but I do eat Greek yogurt. I really like Greek yogurt to get a good source of protein in as well. And I do supplement protein because I found that I wasn't eating enough protein. So I do supplement with a really good quality, low glycemic index whey protein powder.
Okay. So you put that like in a smoothie in the morning or
I
something?
put it in a smoothie in the morning, or I'm learning how to make all kinds of things with it. I make protein pudding. I just made some pumpkin spice, a homemade pumpkin spice protein bars that are really good. I'll be making more later on today. So I'm making all kinds of things just besides the regular smoothie that I have. I bake all kinds of things with the protein powder, so that I have more variety in my diet. And I try to eat seasonally as well and eat things that are in season where I live. Um, Here in here in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, we're not lucky enough to have temperate temperatures all year round. It gets cold here, and we don't always have access to a lot of fresh fruits in the fall and winter time besides apples. We grow apples locally here in the Maritimes, but besides that, there's not a whole lot of fruit around unless it's brought in from elsewhere in the fall and winter. So Ralph and I had also talked about that, and the fact that, we talked about avoiding convenience foods, but not all convenience foods are bad, and particularly stroke survivors don't always have the ability to do things like chop fruit and whatnot. So, um, if we buy frozen fruits or vegetables, the fruits and vegetables have been picked and frozen at the height of ripeness. So frozen fruits and vegetables can be equally as good for you as fresh. Canned as a last resort, but frozen fruits and vegetables can be equal. It can be convenient to use, less expensive sometimes than fresh, and they keep for a longer period of time. For example, I always buy bags of frozen chopped avocados because I eat avocados, but I don't eat a whole avocado at once because it's too much fat for at one time for me. And as a result, the avocado goes brown and I don't like to eat it anymore when it's brown. I prefer mine green. So I prefer to buy frozen chunked avocado, which I just take out several pieces and thaw it when I want to eat it, and it stays nice and green and it's nice and fresh, tastes nice and fresh. Mm.
Yeah, frozen stuff is real convenient. You can, for those smoothies and stuff, you can buy a bag of at Walmart or Costco. They've got organic blueberries, and they're
Yeah.
actually cheaper than the fresh ones. When they have fresh ones, I get them. I like to put them on my cereal in the
Yeah.
morning. But they actually did studies. Clarence Birdseye, as in Birdseye Frozen Foods, invented the freezing process. And you're right, they've actually done studies that there's as much nutrition, no nutrition is particularly lost, and the fact that they're picked and flash frozen at the height of the season might mean that the ones that got picked in August are better than the ones that are coming in from Chile that took 4 days to get here in February. So
Exactly.
that's something to think about. The other thing is that you and I talked about in terms of this frozen food thing was that frozen foods actually make it easier to prepare meals. You can cook some rice, you can get a bag of stir fry veggies, make some sauce, or buy a clean sauce that you like, cook the rice, throw the veggies on, put the sauce on top, you got stir fry in, a few minutes.
Throw
Um,
a few beans in and you have a complete protein with the rice and the beans.
there you go. I eat a
I
lot.
always wondered, I always wondered why my husband and I like to travel to sunny destinations. Normally, pre-COVID, we did anyways. And I always wondered why in Latin American countries, why they always pair rice with beans a lot of the times. Well, it's because their other protein sources, their chicken and their cows, are very small and they don't get much meat from them because they can't afford to feed them. If we pair both rice and beans are considered incomplete proteins, but if they're paired together, they are considered a complete protein.
Yep. And this is stuff that people worked out 10,000 years ago, the Cherokees with the three sisters.
Yeah.
Um, you, you know, basically, what's happened to us is we used to wander. It wasn't 10,000 years ago that we were living in caves and wandering around picking berries and finding nuts and gathering, and then the transition happened to um, cultivating foods.
Mm,
Prior to that, we were basically hunter-gatherers.
yeah.
And it's a lot easier to find some berries than it is to kill a saber-toothed tiger and eat them. Um,
Yeah.
Safer too. So, you have to think about it in terms of where we came from. There aren't any processed food trees, on the African savanna. You don't wander up, you're lucky to you find nuts and berries and things like that. You're not going to find like, you know, a can of SpaghettiOs trees.
No.
No, I'm being absurd for a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a point. Makes a point.
Well, that's where we came from, and so
Yeah.
shopping in those center aisles of the supermarket is, kind of foreign to what we're made to eat. Our
Hmm.
bodies can only evolve so fast. One of the other things about this is, our life expectancy in that time has gone from 25 years to 75 or 80 years. Our
Hmm.
teeth weren't designed to make it that way. Anybody who's 50 or 60 and starts, doing the root canal crap knows that, our teeth just aren't made to make it 100 years. And it's
Mm.
because evolution hadn't caught up. I suppose if we eat a bunch of processed foods, be interesting. Evolution's not that fast. So I was thinking take a group and feed them processed foods and feed others natural, and you'd wonder if you end up with different kind of human beings. Um, anyway, that's way off subject.
Well,
So,
they did do there was a study that was done that my husband quoted yesterday from the documentary that he watched. And they took there was a group of Japanese women who grew up disease-free in Japan that moved to North America and adopted the regular North American diet. There was a much higher percentage of disease in those women, those Japanese women that were in North America, than there is in Japan, where they came from.
well, and I believe Japan has the overall highest life expectancy on the planet.
They do,
So
yep.
what happened was you take people out of the culture and put them in another culture, and that culture influences their longevity essentially.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so um, yeah, they did a study because I always thought it might be diet, and diet certainly plays a point. But they went to all the cultures around the world, they being anthropologists, I suppose, the elusive they, and looked at all cultures that lived to be 100 years old or more. The Georgian men, and there are several tribes in South America, and Japanese, and you know what the common thread was in all of them? It wasn't diet. They couldn't find anything common in diet. Now, I don't know if they looked at that, whole protein carb, balance thing, but they were looking at specific foods, I think. But the one thing they found in common, and the only thing they found in common, was that in all those cultures, people broke a sweat every single day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, we sit around our computers and we drink diet soda and eat processed foods with ingredients this long in the supermarket. If I pick up a can of something, I don't necessarily read it because if I look at it and it has more than about 6 ingredients, and literally has like 40, and some of them are in parentheses and some of them I can't pronounce, bingo,
Forget it.
it goes back. Yeah, I have a friend who says, that no recipe should contain more than 7 ingredients, too. That's an interesting concept. Um,
Well, if we keep it as simple as possible, our gut is much better able to digest it. And people, like earlier, Bruce was talking about what our hormones, and just having anytime we're under stress of any kind, and let's face it, having a stroke is pretty stressful.
yeah.
So anytime we're under stress of any kind, it can cause our hormones to be out of balance. And it happened to me just past January. I started listening to the news a little bit more with respect to COVID, and it was really getting to me in particular at that point in time. So my stress level went way up for a little while, throw my hormones out of balance. So all of a sudden I noticed that I was feeling a little fluffy around the middle section, and I didn't know at first what was happening, but it was my stress level and my hormones had gone out of balance. So all I did was return back to eating basic foods in their natural state as much as possible, and doing breaking a sweat every day, but reducing the intensity of my exercise. I still exercised every day, but I didn't exercise to the intensity level to drive my cortisol levels back up, because I was rebalancing my hormone levels.
Well, and, back to Africa, you find a bush with nuts or a tree with fruit and tend to eat a lot of one thing. There weren't any all you can eat buffet bars in Africa 10,000 years ago. So
No.
we eat all these different kinds of things too. So I think that's one reason why pure and simple also are a good thing. It's kind of like what our bodies are used to and meant to and evolved to be eating. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, we should vary the colors of the food that we eat. I use the phrase eat the rainbow all the time, particularly when it comes to vegetables, because we all have our favorite foods that we tend to gravitate to all the time. My husband's favorite vegetable is carrots. He would eat only carrots and no other vegetables if I let that happen. But our carrots only contain certain nutrients. If we want to get the various nutrients that our body needs in order to function optimally, we have to eat a variety of colors of vegetables, green vegetables, yellow, purple, all different colors to get the nutrient.
No, I've always heard that too and practiced that too. You know, eat your colors, eat as many different colors as you can.
Yeah.
Rebecca, did you want to talk at all about uh,
Thank you.
pardon?
No,
No? Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on the vegan aspect or if we covered it enough. Um, Basically, you know, what in talking with Sherry, our idea was, you know, to not promote any diet and not bash any real diets. There's good things in lots of them, and you know, I guess it comes back to like designing your own exercise program, and listening to your body, designing
Yeah.
your own nutrition program, and listening to your body. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know. I assume everybody else heard Cherry say 2 or 3 times during this hour, and I noticed all of a sudden. So, you know, that's real valuable stuff to be able to do that. It's not going to happen if you don't pay attention. And
Mm.
I guess I believe, I don't think we're born with it. So I think that maybe some body awareness can be developed if you look inward and pay attention. And,
Mm.
you know, the other
Our,
thing,
our metacognition, or our ability to recognize things about ourselves, is like a muscle that needs to be exercised, just like a muscle in our body. So the more we do it, the better we become at it.
I would have to agree. I guess I was
Mm.
a much more eloquent version of what I was trying to say. um, Well, anybody got any questions? We kind of dwindled down to 6 of us, it looks like, but that's okay. It'll go out on YouTube, and we've been getting a lot more views on YouTube than we used to, which is a good thing because the point
Mm.
of doing this is, you know, to get that good information out, and it takes some time on Sherry's part and my part to do this, and certainly like to thank Sherry for her continued willingness to share her information, put up with me, and come to the group. And if we don't have any questions, I guess I would say I don't know if there's anything we didn't cover. I mean, I'm sure there's bunches of stuff we didn't cover, but um, that was about all you can do in an hour. And hopefully it'll provide people with, like what I say, to figure out what's best for them. That's why we call this the best diet for you.
Yeah, because there is no ideal diet. It's the best diet is the one that you can stick to and that works the best for your own body.
Let's talk about real quick before we end it. I loved your concept of nobody is going to stick to anything. I mean, we're human beings. We like variety. So
Exactly.
one of the problems that people have with going on diets is that they go off of them. First of all, it's temporary thinking. If you okay, I'm going to go on this diet, achieve this goal, and then I'll get off this diet and I'll go back to what I was doing, which is going to cause the problem again. So
Hmm.
it's a lifestyle change. But also, we all cheat. And Sherry, you had a good one about it's not cheating, it's what?
Treat, cheat, not treat.
Right.
Or treat, not cheat, sorry. So I used to always think, because I was always on a diet, I used to think of if I ate something that wasn't the best for me, that had refined sugar in it, like an ice cream or a piece of cake or something, I would say I cheated on my diet. And the word cheat has a negative connotation to it. Whereas if we think of it as a treat, then it has a more positive connotation. And treats should be that. They should feel good. It should feel good to eat it, and we should enjoy it.
Right. And they're also only treats if you're doing the right thing most of the time.
Exactly, exactly. If you have something, if you have a treat every day, it's not exactly a treat anymore.
Right. And the other thing is we get put into situations where, what are you going to do at a birthday party? You're going to tell them, no, I don't eat cake? Yeah, you can do that. I don't know. We get put in social situations that sometimes cause us to go with the flow. And,
Yeah.
the other thing is every once in a while I get I'll get, cravings. So yeah, I don't worry about it. I always say I take care of myself in most ways so I can abuse myself in a few.
I should point out perhaps two things about diets.
Sure.
First, in general, diets don't work.
That's
Right.
right.
That is, people will get on a diet and let's say lose 5 pounds, but then they get off the diet and not go back to normal or what normal was, but go beyond. So they weigh more than they did before they started the diet.
Mhm.
A second point is, in general, people that weigh less than people that weigh more do so because they are constantly fidgeting.
Mm.
They're constantly doing small movements, twiddling their thumbs, shaking their leg, doing something to burn off energy. And that's why some people just naturally weigh less than others. They might be eating the same thing as the person that gains the weight, but they fidget, they move, they aren't sedentary. They'll get up and check something or another,
Yeah.
or they'll just tap their fingers or
Mm.
shake their leg, somehow burn off the energy.
Yeah. And an average, if we do a workout, the average workout, you're gonna burn, even if it's an hour long intense workout, you're gonna burn like around between 250 to 500 calories. But if you are active throughout your day and incorporate more movement into your day, like the fidgeting Bruce was just talking about, you're going to be burning more calories over the course of your day, just fidgeting and the movements that you're doing.
Yes.
Well, and if you pick up a king size Snickers bar and you look at it, it'll say it has 450 calories in it, and you have to work about an hour of intense aerobics to get rid of that.
Or more.
Yeah, so think about that before you eat it.
It's better to burn off the energy just putting it back down.
Exactly.
I have a thing about snacks and I don't want to call them bad foods, foods that I really would prefer not to eat. And it's the same philosophy I have about plastic. When I go to the supermarket, I carry my own bags, of course, because I don't want them to give me any plastic. I sometimes make decisions based on how things are packaged. I wish we would go back to the old, giant apothecary jars on the scoops and bring your own paper bags, but we're not.
You sound like my wife.
But
You sound like my wife. She always brings her own bags into the grocery store.
right, well, I don't want the plastic, so I do the same thing with foods and stuff. So don't go to the grocery store when you're like really hungry because you'll end up buying stuff that you might not want. So, I leave the snacks and things that I don't want to eat at the supermarket. And then
You don't bring it home from the grocery store, you can't eat it.
that's right, at 9 o'clock at night when I'm like going, what can I find to eat? I don't have anything. So, it's just, it's a little, there are a lot of little tricks, eating salad first.
My wife and I try to always go to the grocery store right after lunch.
Mm.
We're retired, but we go to the grocery store after we've eaten lunch.
Well, it makes a
Exactly.
big difference because if you're hungry, everything looks good to you. I know when I go to the grocery store, and it's not about money, but my bill is bigger, my cart's more full. And
Mm.
do I need all of it? I don't know. When you buy it, you eat it. I mean, if I bring it home, I'm I'm likely to eat it. Anyway.
One of the things that we started doing that I never did before was making my husband and I do a meal plan together for the week, and make a list of what we're getting for groceries before we go to the grocery store. So by doing it before we even go anywhere, then we're using a rational side of our brain rather than the emotional side of our brain that we're looped into when we're looking at the packages, or if we're hungry, then our emotional center, our amygdala, is looped in when we want to keep it rational choice as much as possible, right? So we go to the grocery store, we have our list with our plan in mind, we stick to the list. It makes grocery shopping much faster, it makes it a lot less expensive, plus we don't bring home crap, as you called it, Ralph, that we shouldn't be bringing into the house.
Well, I do the same thing. The only downside to it is I stick strictly to the list, and occasionally I forget something, and then I go, "Oh, I forgot the whatever. I was making stir fry, and I forgot the ginger. I forgot fresh ginger." I mean, that's a problem. Anyway,
Yeah.
no, I do the same thing. I have a little trick because I like to eat my own meals. I like to eat freshly prepared meals made with, good ingredients. So I basically have 2 meals a week, and I eat the same thing every other night.
Mm.
And if I'm making a fish and veggie plate, I'll cook 4 sweet potatoes, and I do the fish every night, obviously, but I'll have the sweet potatoes all ready to go. And
Yeah.
I'll buy some spinach and I'll wilt it fresh, and if I'm doing it all week and I go back by the store, I might buy a second bag of spinach so that my spinach doesn't have to sit in the refrigerator. The second bag doesn't have to sit for 5 days before I get around to it. So that's a real good thing that I've worked out. I ended up doing it by accident because I used to live in Florida and work in Charlotte. My wife took a job in Florida, and I like to cook, so I would cook on Saturday and Sunday nights, and she couldn't eat all the stuff. And so I started taking meals with me on the airplane, and just I'd go to the salad bar at the supermarket. I'd have my 4 meals for the week, two and
Yeah.
two, and I'd go to the salad bar and make a fresh salad and pull out one of my meals. It's 2 days old. You reheat it. It's, perfectly good. In fact, things like lasagna and baked ziti are better the second time.
Yeah.
And the third time, they're about the same as the first, and maybe they go downhill the fourth time. Um, Living alone lately, it's been kind of challenging because I used to make big lasagna pans full of everything. I don't want to eat the same thing every other night for like for like 2 weeks, seven meals. You get tired of
Freeze
it.
half of it.
Yeah, you can freeze part of it, and
Mm.
so I do that. So there are a lot of little tricks you can do to make life and your nutrition easier and better, but you have to pay attention, like a lot of things in life. So it has to be
Exactly.
important to you because you don't pay attention to the things that aren't important to you.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, well, I guess we ought to wrap this up